Have you ever wondered if there's something about your mind that no one has ever told you? Something so deep, so revealing, that it could completely transform the way you see yourself and live your life. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in modern psychology, dove into the darkest layers of the human psyche and uncovered truths that many professionals avoid discussing. Not out of malice, but because these truths challenge the traditional model of psychology. They break away from what is considered safe and scientifically acceptable. Jung wasn't interested in merely treating symptoms. He wanted to liberate souls. Carl Jung believed that the human mind is not an isolated island, but part of a vast and invisible ocean that connects all human beings. This ocean is what he called the collective unconscious, a deep dimension of the psyche that doesn't arise from personal experience, but from the psychological inheritance of the human species. Unlike the personal unconscious, which is shaped by each individual's life events and traumas, the collective unconscious is made up of universal contents found across all cultures, eras, and societies. These are images, ideas, and patterns that spontaneously emerge in dreams, fantasies, religious beliefs, and stories passed down through generations. Jung observed that myths from distant civilizations, with no contact between them, share similar structures. The hero who faces the monster, the protective mother, the wise old man, the rebirth after the fall. These patterns are not coincidences. They are manifestations of archetypes, the fundamental elements of the collective unconscious. These archetypes don't have fixed forms, but express themselves through symbols. For example, the mother archetype might appear as a goddess, a maternal figure in dreams, or even as nature itself. The hero archetype might show up as a warrior, a savior, or a video game character. What matters is that these images are not created by culture. They are revealed through it. Jung believed the collective unconscious is like a reservoir of human experience where the basic structures of the soul are stored. When you dream of something you've never lived through but feel it carries deep meaning, you may be accessing this ancestral field. When you're moved by a story that has nothing to do with your life, but feels like it speaks directly to you, it's the collective unconscious manifesting itself. This theory radically changes how we understand the mind. It shows that we are not merely shaped by the environments we grow up in, but also carry a psychic inheritance that links us to all of humanity. This means our deepest fears, inexplicable desires, and even our decisions may be influenced by forces we cannot see, but that live within us. Jung didn't see this as a burden, but as a gateway to self-knowledge. By recognizing that a collective dimension exists within us, we can better understand our inner conflicts, our repetitive patterns, and even our hidden talents. We begin to see that we are not alone in our anguish. It belongs to a much larger story that began long before us and continues unfolding through each of us. Your psychologist might help you understand your childhood, your traumas, and your current relationships. But Jung would say that to truly understand who you are, you must go beyond your biography. You must dive into the history of humanity, into the symbols that inhabit you, into the dreams that visit you, into the images that move you without explanation. Because it's in that deep territory where the essence of your psyche resides. And it's there that you begin to realize you are not just an individual. You are a living fragment of the collective soul of humanity. Now that you know there's an ancestral force within you, perhaps it's time to look at the darker side of the mind, the part you learned to hide. Let's talk about the shadow. Carl Jung discovered that within every person lies a hidden, silent, and often ignored part of the psyche, the shadow. It's not a mystical concept, but a psychological reality that directly influences our attitudes, choices, and relationships. The shadow is made up of everything you've learned to hide. Emotions deemed ugly, thoughts that don't match the image you want to project, impulses repressed since childhood. It could be the anger you suppress, the jealousy you deny, the desire you judge as immoral, or even talents you've buried out of fear of rejection. Society, family, and culture shape what is considered acceptable, and everything that doesn't fit is pushed into the unconscious. But what is repressed doesn't vanish. It becomes shadow. This shadow isn't just a container of traumas and negative impulses. It also holds valuable aspects of your personality that were rejected. Jung believed that ignoring the shadow is living only half a life. When you don't acknowledge your darker sides, they end up surfacing in distorted ways. Outbursts of anger, harsh judgments of others, silent self-sabotage that blocks your progress. The shadow operates between the lines, in moments when you lose control, in decisions that make no sense, in patterns that trap you. And the more you deny your shadow, the stronger it becomes. Jung said, "What is not brought to consciousness comes forth as fate." In other words, what you don't face within ends up controlling you from the outside. Facing the shadow is not a comfortable process. It's a deep dive where you must let go of the idea of perfection and accept that darkness exists within you. But it's precisely in this confrontation that transformation begins. When you recognize your shadow, it stops being a hidden enemy and becomes a source of power. You begin to understand your reactions, manage your impulses, and free yourself from automatic behaviors. The shadow, when integrated, brings authenticity, courage, and clarity. It allows you to be whole, not just an edited version of yourself. And that doesn't mean acting without limits, but living with awareness, knowing you're capable of feeling everything, yet choosing what to do with it. Most psychologists work with symptoms: anxiety, depression, conflict. Jung went further. He believed suffering is a signal that something repressed is asking to be seen. True healing doesn't lie in eliminating the symptom, but in understanding what it's trying to reveal. And almost always, the answer lies in the shadow. That's why Jung didn't seek normality. He sought wholeness. And wholeness is only possible when you allow yourself to look at what was hidden, rejected, forgotten. Because it's there, in what you fear most, that your true power resides. After confronting the shadow, another question arises. Who are you really, when you're not trying to please or fit in? For Jung, that answer lies behind the mask you wear every day, the persona. Carl Jung observed that, in order to live in society, we all create a kind of character, a mask we wear to be accepted, understood, and valued. This mask is what he called the persona. The persona is shaped by social expectations, the roles we take on, and the images we project to the world. It can be the dedicated professional, the funny friend, the exemplary child, the reliable partner. There's nothing wrong with playing these roles. They're necessary for coexistence, work, and survival. The problem begins when you believe that you are only that, when the mask sticks to your face and you forget who's behind it. The persona is built early in life. A child learns that, to be loved, they must behave in a certain way. They learn that some emotions must be hidden, that some desires are inappropriate, that showing vulnerability might lead to rejection. Over time, they shape their personality to fit in. And while this adaptation is useful, it can become an invisible prison. Jung warned that when the ego identifies too strongly with the persona, a phenomenon called inflation of the persona occurs. The person becomes a hostage to the role they play. They live to maintain the image, to meet expectations, to avoid disappointment. And in doing so, they lose touch with their essence. This disconnection causes suffering. A person may feel empty, anxious, confused. They may feel like they're living a life that isn't theirs, always performing, even when alone. They may feel they no longer know what they truly want, because they've spent so long trying to please others that they've stopped listening to themselves. Jung believed this kind of suffering isn't pathological. It's a sign that the true self is trying to emerge. The persona is useful when it's flexible, when it serves as a bridge between the individual and the world. But when it becomes rigid, it stifles inner growth. Deconstructing the persona doesn't mean abandoning social roles, but recognizing that they're only part of who you are. It means looking inward and asking, what exists beyond the image I've built? What desires have I silenced? What emotions have I disguised? What parts of me have I left behind to fit in? This process requires courage because it may reveal an unfamiliar face, a version of you that wasn't shaped to please, but that carries authenticity. Jung believed the path to individuation begins when you stop living to be accepted and start living to be whole. When the mask begins to fall, what remains isn't emptiness. It's what has always been there, waiting to be recognized. And at that point, the journey stops being about roles and starts being about essence. Jung called that silent core, which observes everything without being confused by anything, the self. Carl Jung believed that the true purpose of life is not to achieve superficial happiness, but to become whole, someone who knows and integrates all parts of themselves. This deep and transformative process is what he called individuation. Individuation is not about becoming perfect or fitting into external standards. It's about discovering who you truly are, beyond masks, beyond fears, beyond expectations. It's the journey of integration between the conscious and the unconscious, between what you show and what you hide, between who you think you are and who you really are. It's a path that demands courage, because it involves facing everything that has been repressed, forgotten, or denied throughout life. In the process of individuation, you begin to realize that your mind is not made only of rational thoughts. It is also inhabited by symbols, images, impulses, and emotions that come from deep places. You begin to recognize the shadow, what you've hidden, and the persona, what you've shown. And instead of choosing one over the other, you learn to unite these opposites. Jung said that the human psyche has a natural tendency toward wholeness, and individuation is the path to fulfill that tendency. It's not a fast or linear process. It's full of conflicts, ruptures, discoveries, and reconstructions. But it's also the only path that leads to authenticity. The self, for Jung, is the center of the psyche, not the ego, which is only the conscious part, but a totality that includes everything you are. The self is not an abstract idea, but a living experience. It manifests in dreams, intuitions, and decisions that seem to come from a deeper place. When you approach the self, you begin to feel that your life has a meaning that goes beyond circumstances. You stop living just to please, compete, or survive, and start living to fulfill what is most true within you. Individuation is this process of approaching the self, and no one can do it for you. A therapist can help. A book can inspire, a conversation can open paths, but the journey is yours. You are the one who must face your own monsters, cross your own deserts, and find your own voice. This journey has no defined endpoint. It unfolds throughout life, in different phases, with different challenges. And the closer you get to the self, the more capable you become of living with freedom, responsibility, and depth. Individuation doesn't disconnect you from the world. It connects you to it in a more genuine way. Because when you know yourself, you also begin to understand others more deeply. And when you become whole, you stop searching outside for what can only be found within. But there's one place where this inner search intensifies in surprising ways: in dreams. It's in them that the unconscious speaks most clearly, revealing symbols, messages, and truths that the waking mind cannot access. Carl Jung believed that dreams are far more than mere reflections of our daily experiences. To him, dreams are spontaneous manifestations of the unconscious, emerging when the ego, our conscious self, is at rest. In this state, the deeper mind expresses itself through symbols, images, and narratives that may seem confusing or meaningless at first glance, yet carry important messages about who we are, what we feel, and what we need to confront. Jung didn't see dreams as mere fantasies or repressed desires, as Freud proposed. He saw them as a symbolic language that reveals hidden contents of the psyche, especially those that have been ignored, suppressed, or forgotten. This symbolic language is not literal. Dreaming of a house, for example, might represent your mind, your emotional state, or even your inner structure. Dreaming of water could indicate deep emotions, transformation, or rebirth. Jung observed that many of these symbols appear repeatedly across different cultures and eras, which led him to the concept of archetypes, universal patterns that are part of the collective unconscious. These archetypes manifest in dreams as recurring figures: the hero, the wise old man, the child, the shadow, the mother, among others. They are not fixed characters, but representations of psychic forces that influence our inner life. When an archetype appears in a dream, it signals something that needs to be understood or integrated. Jung also spoke of the compensatory function of dreams. This means that dreams balance what is out of harmony in the conscious mind. If you're living too rationally, you might dream of chaotic or emotional situations. If you're repressing anger, you might dream of explosions or confrontations. Dreams reveal what's missing, what's being ignored, and what needs to be brought to light. They are like mirrors of the soul, showing aspects we can't see while awake. That's why Jung recommended writing down dreams upon waking, reflecting on the emotions involved, and trying to understand the symbols present. There is no fixed dictionary of meanings. Each symbol must be interpreted within the context of the dreamer's life. According to Jung, dream interpretation is a powerful tool for self-knowledge. It allows access to deep layers of the psyche, helps understand internal conflicts, uncovers hidden desires, and can even anticipate important changes. Dreams can reveal unresolved traumas, point toward healing paths, or simply show what's happening at the most intimate level of the mind. Ignoring dreams is to waste one of the most direct forms of communication with the unconscious. They are not noise. They are coded messages that, when deciphered, can transform the way you live, feel, and relate. Carl Jung didn't want you to become normal. He wanted you to become yourself. His teachings reveal that the human mind is a labyrinth of symbols, ancestral memories, repressed impulses, and forgotten potentials. The real secret your psychologist might not tell you is that you don't need to adapt to the world. You need to find yourself. And when that happens, the world begins to adapt to you. If this video made you think, then Jung fulfilled his purpose. Because awakening begins the moment you realize the mind isn't a problem to be solved. It's a universe waiting to be explored.